Are you worried about keeping your mind sharp and staying healthy as you get older? It feels like just getting through the day can sometimes feel like navigating a minefield of potential health worries, doesn't it? Maybe you've seen friends or family struggle with memory issues or other serious health conditions later in life, and you just want to do everything you can to avoid that path yourself. It's a painful reality that as the years go by, we become more aware of our vulnerability. And the fear of losing our independence or our cognitive abilities can be a heavy burden. We read articles, listen to advice, trying to find that one secret, that one change that could make a real difference. What if I told you that sometimes the things that could potentially raise your risk, even slightly, of serious long-term conditions like certain cancers or issues affecting your memory aren't some exotic ingredient or complicated exercise, but something as simple and everyday as how you handle your leftovers? It sounds surprising, I know, but certain common foods, when reheated in certain ways, or after improper storage, can undergo changes that are best avoided if you're looking to support your long-term health. In this video, we're going to look at 5 everyday foods you might be reheating regularly and understand why being a little more mindful about how you handle them could be a small but significant step in protecting your health as you age, potentially helping to lower your risk of issues linked to cancer or even cognitive decline down the road. We'll dive into what these foods are, why reheating needs care, and simple things you can do differently starting today. So, watch to the end for something that will surprise you. So, let's talk about the first food on our list, something most of us have sitting in our fridge right now, or certainly cook regularly: rice. Now, rice itself isn't the problem. Of course, it's a staple food for billions around the world and provides energy and nutrients. The potential issue arises when cooked rice is left standing at room temperature for too long. You see, uncooked rice can contain spores of a bacterium called Bacillus cereus. These spores can survive cooking if cooked rice is left at room temperature. These spores can grow into bacteria, and these bacteria produce toxins. It's these toxins that can cause food poisoning, leading to vomiting and diarrhea. Now, you might be thinking, what does a bit of food poisoning have to do with cancer or dementia risk? Well, it's not the direct link you might imagine from, say, smoking or certain chemical exposures. Instead, it's more about the broader picture of inflammation and cellular damage over time, and how repeated instances of foodborne illness or exposure to certain bacterial toxins can contribute to systemic stress on the body. While the direct link between the Bacillus cereus atri, toxins, and cancer or dementia is not a direct line, maintaining a healthy gut and avoiding unnecessary exposure to pathogens and their toxins is part of an overall strategy to reduce inflammation, support immune function, and protect your cells from damage, all factors that play into long-term health, including cognitive health and disease prevention. When we talk about things that raise risk, it's often about cumulative effects and reducing as many potential stressors on the body as possible over the years. Reheating rice properly kills the bacteria, but it doesn't destroy the toxins they've already produced. This is the crucial point. So, reheating leftover rice thoroughly might make it safe from live bacteria, but if it sat out too long initially, those toxins are still there. The key to avoiding this potential issue with rice isn't just about reheating it scorching hot. It's about handling it correctly from the moment it's cooked. The advice is simple, but often overlooked in our busy lives. Once your rice is cooked, if you're not going to eat it immediately, cool it down as quickly as possible. The ideal way is to spread it out on a tray or a wide dish so the steam can escape and the temperature drops rapidly. Get it into the refrigerator within an hour. And definitely within 2 hours at most, especially in warmer conditions. This rapid cooling prevents those Bacillus cereus spores from multiplying and producing toxins in the first place. Then, when you want to reheat it, make sure it's heated through completely, piping hot, and it's best to only reheat it once. If you have leftover reheated rice, it's probably best to discard it rather than saving it again. Think of it this way every time food is left in the danger zone temperature between 40 degrees and 140 degrees, or 50 degrees and 60 degrees. Bacteria have a party. The longer they party, the more toxins they produce. Cooling quickly shuts down the party, Reheating properly kills the partygoers but leaves their mess behind. So, the real secret with rice isn't just reheating, it's the cooling and storage beforehand. Making this small change, cooling and refrigerating cooked rice promptly, significantly reduces the risk associated with reheating it later. It's a simple habit, but one that removes a potential source of harmful toxins from your diet, contributing to that broader goal of reducing inflammation and cellular stress that can, over decades, influence your risk profile for various diseases, including those that affect the brain and other organs. It's about being proactive with your food safety, treating your kitchen like a health sanctuary where small preventative measures make a big difference over the long haul. So next time you make a pot of rice, think about its journey from the pot to the plate, and make sure that cooling step is swift and sure. This diligence with something as common as rice sets a good foundation for handling other leftovers too, leading us smoothly to our next food on the list that needs careful attention when reheating. Now, let's turn our attention to another very common leftover potatoes. Whether they were roasted, boiled, mashed, or part of a stew, potatoes are delicious and versatile, like rice. The potential problem with reheating potatoes often stems from how they are stored before reheating, rather than the reheating process itself. Cooked potatoes, especially if they are left at room temperature after cooking, can also become a breeding ground for bacteria, specifically Clostridium botulinum. This is the bacterium that produces the toxin responsible for botulism, a rare but very serious illness that attacks the nerves. While botulism is most often associated with improperly canned foods, Clostridium botulinum site spores are found in soil and can be present on the surface of potatoes. These spores can survive cooking. If cooked potatoes, particularly baked potatoes wrapped in foil, are left at room temperature without proper cooling and refrigeration, the low oxygen environment created by the foil, or even just the dense structure of a mashed potato dish, can be ideal for these spores to germinate and produce the botulinum toxin. This toxin is incredibly potent. Again, you might wonder about the link to cancer or dementia. Botulism is an acute illness, distinct from chronic conditions. However, the broader principle of food safety and avoiding exposure to potent toxins relates to overall health and reducing systemic burden. While botulism toxin itself doesn't directly cause cancer or dementia in the way persistent inflammation or oxidative stress might, consistently practicing good food hygiene and safety reduces the overall toxic load and stress on your body. It supports your immune system and reduces the likelihood of illnesses that can stress your entire system, potentially impacting long-term health trajectories. Think of it as removing another variable that could contribute to poor health outcomes over time. The botulinum toxin is not destroyed by typical reheating temperatures. So, reheating your potatoes thoroughly won't protect you if the toxin has already been produced. The key to enjoying leftover potatoes safely lies, just like with rice, in how you handle them immediately after cooking. If you bake potatoes, particularly in foil, remove them from the foil as soon as they're done and let them cool quickly. Don't leave them wrapped up at room temperature for hours. For any cooked potato dish, boiled potatoes, mashed potatoes, roasted potatoes, cool them down and get them into the refrigerator promptly. Within an hour or two, store them in a shallow container to help them cool down faster in the fridge. When you decide to reheat your potatoes, make sure you heat them until they are steaming hot all the way through. Avoid letting reheated potatoes sit out for extended periods either. It's all about minimizing the time they spend in that temperature danger zone, where harmful bacteria can multiply and produce toxins. Making it a habit to cool and refrigerate all cooked leftovers, including potatoes, without delay is a simple, yet powerful food safety practice. It reduces the risk of acute foodborne illness and contributes to a cleaner, safer diet over the long term, which supports overall health and resilience. It's these layers of good habits, like proper storage and careful reheating, that build a foundation for better health outcomes as we age. Moving from starchy staples, let's consider something else commonly reheated in many households that requires similar vigilance. That brings us to our third common food, often reheated chicken and other poultry. Leftover roast chicken, turkey slices, chicken stir-fry. These are all delicious and convenient. The primary concern with reheating chicken is the risk of salmonella or Campylobacter contamination. These bacteria are commonly found on raw poultry, and can cause severe food poisoning if not handled and cooked properly. While the initial cooking should kill these bacteria, improper storage and reheating can create problems. If cooked chicken is left at room temperature for too long, any surviving bacteria or contamination that occurs after cooking can multiply rapidly. Then, if the chicken isn't reheated thoroughly to a safe internal temperature, these bacteria won't be killed, and you risk food poisoning. Again, the link to cancer or dementia isn't direct cause and effect, but repeated bouts of food poisoning put significant stress on your body. They can disrupt your gut microbiome, trigger widespread inflammation, and weaken your immune system over time. Chronic inflammation is increasingly linked to a range of chronic diseases, including some cancers and neurodegenerative conditions like dementia. By minimizing your risk of foodborne illness through careful handling of leftovers like chicken, you're reducing a source of systemic stress and inflammation, supporting your body's ability to stay healthy and resilient in the long run. It's about stacking the odds in your favor by removing potential hurdles to good health. The rules for chicken are similar to rice and potatoes, emphasizing speed and temperature. Cooked chicken should be cooled down and refrigerated within 2 hours, ideally sooner. Especially if it's a large piece or a lot of chicken. Cut large pieces into smaller ones to help them cool faster. Store it in covered containers in the fridge. When you're ready to reheat leftover chicken, the crucial step is to make sure it reaches a safe internal temperature to kill any bacteria that might have grown during storage. For poultry, this is generally 165 v 70 fombalt siujagush. You need to heat it until it is steaming hot all the way through. You can use a food thermometer to be sure, especially for thicker pieces. Avoid just warming it up. It needs to be heated through completely. Reheating in a microwave can sometimes heat unevenly, so it's a good idea to stir or rearrange the chicken halfway through and let it stand for a minute or two after heating to ensure the heat distributes evenly. Reheating on the stovetop or in the oven can provide more even heating. And just like with rice, it's best to only reheat chicken once. If you have leftovers from a meal where you reheated chicken, it's safest to discard those. This careful approach to handling and reheating chicken isn't just about avoiding an unpleasant night or two with food poisoning. It's about consistently reducing your exposure to harmful bacteria and their potential impact on your long-term health. It's another piece of the puzzle in maintaining a healthy body and mind as you age. Taking these steps with your chicken leftovers is a simple habit that contributes significantly to your overall food safety practices. Now, let's look at some vegetables, where reheating also warrants attention, but for slightly different reasons than bacterial growth. Let's move on to green leafy vegetables, like spinach or kale. These are nutritional powerhouses, packed with vitamins and minerals. The concern with reheating them isn't primarily about bacteria multiplying after cooking, though proper storage is always important. It's more about compounds they naturally contain called nitrates. Leafy greens are particularly high in nitrates. Nitrates themselves are generally harmless and can even have some health benefits. However, when leafy greens are cooked and then reheated, especially if they've been stored improperly or reheated repeatedly, the nitrates can convert into nitrites, and under certain conditions, nitrites can further transform into nitrosamines. It's these nitrosamines that are potentially problematic, as some are known carcinogens, meaning they could potentially increase the risk of certain types of cancer over time with repeated exposure. Now, it's important not to panic about this. The levels of nitrosamines formed from reheating leafy greens are typically quite low, and our bodies can handle small amounts. The risk is considered relatively small compared to, say, the risks associated with processed meats, which often contain added nitrates and nitrites and are cooked at high temperatures, promoting nitrosamine formation. However, when we are talking about stacking the odds in favor of long-term health and reducing potential risks, especially as we age, minimizing exposure to even small amounts of potential carcinogens through simple dietary habits makes sense for someone who eats and reheats spinach or other high-nitrate vegetables frequently. Being mindful of this potential conversion is a prudent step. So, what's the best way to handle leftover cooked spinach or kale? The safest approach is to try and only cook the amount of leafy greens you plan to eat in one sitting. If you do have leftovers, cool them quickly and store them in the refrigerator. When it comes to reheating, Some experts recommend avoiding reheating spinach altogether, particularly for vulnerable populations like infants because they are more sensitive to the effects of nitrites. For adults, if you do reheat, heat it thoroughly but avoid prolonged or high-temperature heating methods like repeated microwaving or frying at very high heat, which could encourage the conversion of nitrates to nitrites and then nitrosamines. A gentler reheating method, like steaming briefly or incorporating them into a soup or stew that is brought to a gentle simmer, might be preferable. Better still, if you have leftover cooked greens, consider using them in a dish that doesn't require extensive reheating. For example, cooked spinach could be added cold to a salad or stirred into a hot pasta dish right at the end without further cooking. By being mindful of the potential for nitrate conversion upon reheating, especially repeated reheating or reheating at high temperatures, you can make choices that subtly reduce your exposure to potentially harmful compounds over time. It's another small adjustment in your kitchen habits that contributes to the bigger picture of reducing cancer risk and supporting overall cellular health. This consideration for how cooking and reheating changes the chemistry of food leads us to our final food item that deserves a cautious approach to reheating. And finally, let's talk about mushrooms. Mushrooms are fantastic. They add great flavor and texture to dishes and offer unique nutrients. Like leafy greens, the concern with reheating mushrooms isn't typically about dangerous bacteria multiplying rapidly if stored correctly. Although proper cooling and refrigeration are always essential for any cooked food, cooked mushrooms contain certain proteins and enzymes that can be altered by reheating. Some sources suggest that reheating mushrooms, particularly if they have been left to sit for a while after cooking, can lead to them becoming more difficult to digest, potentially causing stomach upset. More importantly, some research has looked into compounds in mushrooms and how they might change with cooking and reheating. While the evidence linking reheated mushrooms directly to increased risks of cancer or dementia isn't as strong or clear-cut as the concerns around bacterial toxins in rice, chopped potatoes, UI chicken, or nitrosamines from nitrates, the general principle of avoiding potentially degraded compounds and prioritizing food safety still applies. Some studies suggest that compounds in mushrooms, while beneficial when fresh or properly cooked, might undergo changes upon improper storage or repeated reheating that could potentially contribute to oxidative stress or other subtle negative effects over time. Again, this isn't about acute poisoning, but about minimizing chronic exposure to substances that might not be ideal for long-term cellular health. Think of it this way. Your body is constantly working to repair itself and manage inflammation and oxidative stress, processes that are linked to aging and chronic diseases, including cancer and neurodegenerative conditions. Every time you consume food that contains potentially harmful compounds, even in small amounts, it adds to your body's workload. By being mindful of how you prepare and handle foods like mushrooms, you're easing that burden. So, how should you handle leftover cooked mushrooms? Similar to leafy greens, the safest bet is often to cook only what you need for one meal. If you do have leftovers, cool them down quickly and store them in the refrigerator, ideally within an hour or two. Store them separately from other components of a mixed dish if possible, as their texture and composition differ. When it comes to reheating, the recommendation is often to reheat them thoroughly, but just once. Avoid leaving reheated mushroom dishes sitting out. Some culinary advice even suggests that if you've cooked mushrooms as part of a dish, the safest way to reheat is to ensure the entire dish is heated to a high temperature all the way through. However, if the mushrooms were cooked on their own, reheating them might best be avoided or done very gently. Perhaps incorporating them cold into a salad or adding them right at the end to a hot dish that's already cooked. For example, leftover sautéed mushrooms could be chopped finely and added to a hot omelet just as it finishes cooking, or stirred into a hot pasta sauce off the heat. The goal is to avoid putting them through a second significant heating process if possible. This care with mushrooms, combined with the vigilance around rice, potatoes, chicken, and leafy greens, creates a powerful set of habits that contribute to a safer, healthier way of eating every day. So, we've walked through 5 common foods: rice, potatoes, chicken, leafy greens like spinach, and mushrooms, and explored why being mindful about how you handle and reheat them isn't just about avoiding food poisoning, but about a broader strategy to reduce potential risks linked to long-term health conditions like certain cancers and issues affecting brain health. It's about understanding that how we treat our food after it's cooked matters. For rice and potatoes, it's primarily about preventing the growth of bacteria like Bacillus cereus and Clostridium botulinum and the toxins they produce. By cooling and refrigerating quickly, for chicken and poultry, it's about preventing the multiplication of bacteria like Salmonella and Campylobacter through prompt chilling and ensuring thorough reheating to a safe temperature. With leafy greens, the focus is on minimizing the conversion of natural nitrates into potentially harmful nitrosamines by avoiding repeated or high-temperature reheating. And for mushrooms, it's about avoiding potential digestive upset and minimizing exposure to potentially degraded compounds by handling and reheating carefully. Ideally just once or incorporating cold. You might be thinking this all sounds a bit daunting, adding more rules to your kitchen routine. But honestly, it boils down to a few simple, overarching principles. Cool hot food down and get it into the refrigerator quickly. Within 2 hours, reheat leftovers thoroughly until they are steaming hot all the way through. At least 165 degrees Fahrenheit, 74 degrees C for things like meat and poultry. And try to avoid reheating the same food multiple times. Simple changes, right? These aren't complicated steps, but they are foundational to food safety. And, as we've discussed, contribute to reducing systemic stress and potential exposure to harmful substances over your lifetime. Remember, small changes really can make a big difference to your health and happiness, especially as you navigate life after 60. You don't have to be perfect, but being aware and making conscious choices most of the time is incredibly powerful. Taking these steps with your leftovers is a way of taking care of yourself, showing your body respect, and actively working towards a healthier future. It's about empowerment, knowing that you have agency in reducing your potential risks simply by being a little more diligent in your kitchen. I truly hope this has been helpful and shed some light on why these seemingly small habits around reheating can have long-term implications. It's about building healthy habits that support your body's natural defenses and reduce its burden. Have you ever experienced issues with leftovers? Or do you have your own tips for handling these foods? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your insights could help others in our community. If you found this information valuable and feel more empowered about handling your food, please give this video a like. It helps us know we're providing content that's useful to you. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell, so you don't miss out on more tips and information designed to help you live your healthiest, happiest life at every age. Taking care of yourself is the most important thing you can do, and it's absolutely achievable. One small step at a time. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep making those choices that support your well-being. Live your best life at every age.